Well, good afternoon. My name is Mary Yusevich, and I'm on the board of directors of NEWIEE, New England Women in Energy and Environment. And for the last 2 years since the pandemic started, we've been hosting Ask Me Anything webinars. And it has been an exciting, wonderful program that we are so thrilled that we can continue into 2022. Today, our Ask Me Anything is with Heather Takle, President and CEO of Power Options. And before we get to Heather, I'd like to first thank our sponsors. Without our sponsors, we would not be able to do any of this programming. So we want them to know how much we appreciate it. And our sponsors are Eversource, First Light, Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, National Grid, Robinson and Cole, Synapse, and those people have been our annual event sponsors, and we cannot thank them enough for everything that they have done. Today's program is really your program because you get to ask the questions and we then ask our speaker. How do I ask a question? Please go down to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a Q&A block. Please put your questions in the Q&A block and I will then ask Heather your question. We will try to get to all the questions and basically we'll sprinkle in a few ourselves, but please put them in the Q&A box and start putting your questions in anytime you want and we'll get to them during the hour with Heather. We have some great programming coming up with NEWIEE. We have what we call NEWIEE Reads. It's a great book where we're going to get a chance to talk to the author of Diversifying Power. This goes in with our theme at NEWIEE, where we're really honing in as a goal to discuss DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the author of this book, Jenny, is going to talk about what she has done in terms of how to diversify that in our power sector. In addition, sign up now for that on January 26th from 5 to 6 p.m. And you can do that on the NEWIEE.org site. The other kind of lunch and learn that we're having is a great opportunity for you to find out all the things that are happening at NEPA. And we have the Assistant Secretary of NEPA, Tori Kim, who is going to give you the whole inside scoop. So again, another great programming from NEWIEE. I strongly recommend that you go to the website and sign up for those two fabulous programs. And last but not least, after a 2-year hiatus, we're actually getting together in person. That's right. So save the date, April 28th, we're going to have the NEWIEE Annual Awards Gala at the Westin Copley Place in Boston. We should pack the house. We can sell up to 1,000 tickets. So please, when those tickets come out, definitely sign up. But in order for us to make sure that we recognize the women that should be recognized, we are asking you to nominate by January 18th. You can find the nomination forms on NEWIEE.org, a woman that you feel really speaks to the leadership, the community involvement, or a young professional. We're really looking for nominations so that we can pick from the regional pool of women that we have in the New England area as our special nominees for the 2022 NEWIEE Annual Awards on April 28th, and nominations are due January 18th. So I'd like to now turn to Heather. And Heather, thank you so much for coming on today's Ask Me Anything. I always refer to it as like the view. So we get an opportunity for you to talk about energy and environment and also a little bit about leadership and all of your work. But I'd like to just get people familiar with you because you haven't been at Power Options very long. And for most of it, it's been during the pandemic when we've all been locked in these little Zoom boxes. So you come from a very interesting background. So you've been at Power Options how many years now?
I just hit my 2-year anniversary, Mary. You remember when we met Beacon Hill, walking down the streets, grabbing coffee?
That is true. 2 years.
Bye-bye.
And most of it has been in a Zoom box. So I'm so glad we're getting to introduce you to a greater audience. And I do remember that coffee walking down the street. And that's why I thought you'd make an excellent person to have on our programming. So an MBA from Harvard Business School, a captain in the military, working your whole life in sustainability and energy. Why power options?
Oh, when it hits you and you read a job description, you say, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do because that's everything I've built up to. It makes sense. So, the tipping point also being just realizing what the organization is doing and who the team is and the wonderful board of directors that we have, in my interviews with them. It just all made sense. And you can't deny that. I was at the time working on my own as an independent consultant doing strategic planning and project development and clean energy for some great companies. And I had a lot of flexibility in my life. So it was a big leap to say, let me go back into working world and not having my own freedom as an independent consultant, a startup entrepreneur. But everything that the organization is doing was really just a sampling of everything I've done, whether it be demand response or ISO New England, clean energy, commodity with electric and gas supply for energy users. But at the end of the day, to me, it was something different because I was a little bit in a lull in my career saying I joined this industry for a mission. Coming out of the military, I got into clean energy because I wanted a mission again, and didn't really want to just be doing making Fortune 500 companies more billions of dollars as I was right after business school. I was searching for something, and clean energy came across my plate with the Al Gore movie. But after 10 years in the industry, I was getting a little bit downtrodden again because working for profit companies wasn't as rewarding. And I just felt like a cog in the wheel at a point. And I think everyone's career goes through this, right? And you just get to certain, ebbs and flows. So there's nothing against working at for-profit companies in the industry. I think it's great mission work. But I was contemplating, do I go back to the government? Because in our industry, a lot of what's being done is driven by policy, right? We know that within clean energy. So this wasn't a government role, it was a nonprofit role, but it gave me an opportunity to say, wait, this is a different angle that I can take that might give me in my career some life again, some excitement, and getting back to feeling much more mission oriented than I was feeling at that point in the career.
Power options. Let's give the viewers here a concept or idea of power options. You keep on using the word nonprofits. So power options, really, what does Power Option do for nonprofits and how was it created? Can you give us a little bit of background as to the world of Power Options?
Yeah, I had heard of Power Options. I knew my predecessor, Cindy Arcade, from earlier days of working together and ISO New England and such. But I like to say Power Options is this really unique, innovative animal in the world of energy. I don't really see a comparable in all of the national landscape in other regions. So the original founder of Power Options really put together something unique. What Power Options is, we call ourselves a nonprofit energy consortium. We work with and only with nonprofits and public entities to help them save on energy, on their cost, and achieve their energy goals. It's because they have finite resources. So the way it originally started was back in 1998 with restructuring, when electric and gas went to competitive supply, and being able to get the energy from a third party rather than from Eversource and National Grid, I think, as most of us know, happened back in the 90s. It was at the time in the Health and Education Financing Authority, the innovator and founder of Power Options came up with the idea, let's pull together all of the nonprofits and public entities across Massachusetts to leverage the buying power of that aggregation. So group buying, group purchasing, you buy things in bulk, you're going to get scale advantages, you're going to get cost advantages. And so that was the original idea. And the original contract that started Power Options for electric and gas were some quite significant savings in terms of the pricing, and the legend still continues to this day. Everything that we do, we try to leverage the buying power of our consortium, leverage the power of the consortium and all 480 plus members that we have, and get them cost savings or whatever other consortium based savings that they can get through an aggregation, the lessons learned from others in the consortium. There's a lot of different other strengths that have come about out now after 22 plus years of operating. But that was the original start. And it was actually built into legislation because we were a Massachusetts entity. We were doing it on behalf of public entities. So we're doing that procurement that we do in all of our programs. We do that procurement on behalf of public entities in Massachusetts so that they don't have to and spend all those legal, financial, resource dollars, et cetera, to do procurement. So that's who Power Options is.
You know, and it's interesting because you talk about the aggregate buying, like, what do we aggregate buy? I mean, someone's probably saying, what is she referring to when she says aggregate buy? Like, so like I have to give up Grid and Eversource as my provider, but how then does my energy get delivered? And so I'm giving this because I'm sure some people, especially we have a lot of young professionals just entering into this whole industry, are trying to wrap their head around this concept. What does she mean when she says aggregate buy? Isn't that what my utility does? And why are you doing it, not the utility? And so if you can give us a little bit more explanation so that people can understand how this all works.
Sure. So when you think about your residential bill, you're probably buying it from the utility. There's not a lot of buying from third-party competitive suppliers in the residential, and it's a little bit contentious in what happens in the residential. Some bad actors out there. They're not all bad, but in the residential area, so it doesn't usually happen. But with commercial and industrial business customers, which nonprofits and public entities, most of their buildings, they purchase energy as on the rates with the utility that are business customer rates. They usually go to third party. By this point, 22 plus years after restructuring, I think it's 80+% of business customers don't buy the energy supply, whether it be electric or natural gas, from National Grid or Eversource or Unitil or whoever their utility is. They buy it from a third party, Constellation, Direct Energy, Unji. I'm going to miss a lot of names that people might be upset about here in terms of the suppliers.
Well, we won't put you on that, but they just buy it from a third party, correct?
Right. And so the aggregation gives us the power of the volume that the suppliers are looking for. So what we do at Power Options in this part of our business is procurement. We go procure a supplier for all of the consortium, for all of our members. We don't commit them, it's non-binding, but we go and we leverage our buying power, and our suppliers who bid on us, they give us the most competitive pricing that they possibly can, right? Because they know the total volume, of 1 billion kilowatt hours at Power Options members is very, very, attractive. And they know that our retention rate, that our members stay with us. And many of them have been members since 1998, since we originally began. And so they give us competitive rates, but also the buying power, what it gives our members is they're not going and doing their own procurement. They're not spending the legal dollars, the financial advisor dollars, and all the dollars that it takes to go run a procurement. They're not doing that on themselves. They also get a lot of consumer protections in the contract. Contracts with suppliers are sometimes not friendly to consumers, and they don't have the ability to go negotiate for themselves on those contracts. Power Options does. And so when we put a Power Options program and contract in place, our members are protected by some extremely customer-friendly terms and conditions in those contracts that keeps them safe. And, we protect them. We're their trusted energy advisor is what they see us as.
Well, that's awesome. We have some questions coming in. And on that note, too, you also do a lot in terms of addressing opportunities in terms of clean energy. And I just wanted to touch on that because then I'd like to switch and talk a little bit more from questions we're getting from the audience. But on the clean energy side, where do you see the growth in clean energy, and how do you do an aggregate deal on the clean energy side?
So we talked a lot about electric and gas. We have 5 main programs, I think it is right now. We can continue to grow as our members' needs grow. But we started with electric and gas right back in 1998. And started in solar in 2010. As solar became popular, became commercial, became economically attractive and saving actual energy costs for our customers, they came to us saying, look, we're getting all these vendors coming to us with pitches and proposals. Can we build a Power Options program? So we built a program around solar. So that was our third. We've done now more than 80 megawatts. I think we have under contract for solar for our members that we've done since 2010. The fourth program is electric vehicle charging. We started that in 2018-19. We went out with the procurement for electric vehicle charging. And then as of 2020, I think it was within 3 months of starting back in the early days, we launched a program for our fleet electrification with the help of a Mass CEC grant, where we're now also helping members electrify their fleets, coming up with the roadmap to electrify their fleets over time to meet their carbon reduction goals.
Well, I'd like to follow up on Molly's question here. She says, what are the most excited about for the future of green energy? Those are things you've done, but if you could give us a peek as to what Power Options sees as the next big thing in green energy.
Sure. So one of the programs that it's an unofficial program, I'll call it right now, so I didn't list it on this, but it would be our 6th program, is an aggregation for renewable energy offsite. Wherein members or energy users don't have enough rooftop space to be able to put the solar on site, and they want to be able to hit their carbon reduction goals. How are they going to hit that if they don't have enough roof space? Well, they're going to go find renewable energy off site. And there are many ways to do that, but if you want the actual renewable energy certificate to that, there's specific, try not to be too technical here, but ways to purchase renewable electricity off-site. Virtual power purchase agreement is one of the kind of typical names of the contract vehicles. When you see Googles and Apples and Salesforce in the world doing this, that's what they're doing. They're doing virtual power purchase agreements, and they're able to do that because they have such scale, right? The amount of energy usage, they're able to negotiate these large deals for, Boston University just did a great one, and a wind farm out in the Midwest that they did. And Boston University has alone the energy usage to be able to do that. Well, what Power Options has many members, right, all together have that kind of scale. So we have just launched a program to do an aggregation for a power purchase agreement that we are working with members on, and putting together members together in an aggregation to go purchase renewable electricity off-site, which may be anywhere, and it will get them the renewable energy credits for that power. So and they're very complicated contracts, so yeah, it's hard to put together.
No, and we're all in this world of virtual. Why not? It seems to be the trend. I'm going to turn now to some personal questions, because we always like to give a little bit, get to know you, what it is like to be in leadership. So Erin Camp asked a question. She said, what was the most useful and impactful part of your education or career path in terms of developing and refining your leadership skills in the energy industry? In other words, she's really trying to find out, what would you suggest a woman in energy who's embarking on her leadership journey, what should she do? I mean, basically, what do you think are those top skills that she needs?
Oh, those are 2 different questions, Mary, because I had a different answer for the first one, for Erin's question, which I love. And so I'll answer both of them because they're a little bit different how you ask them. Number one, for me personally, what was the most impactful, which is not great advice for anyone probably in this room, which is the military. I can't tell you how much that is in the very small number of years that I served, very much a foundation of everything I do. Leadership training as a professional, personal, everything that I am today, I credit, not everything I am, but much of who I am, I can credit to that experience in the Marines. But what would I recommend in skill development and such? Something I learned in the Marines, actually, I continue to apply, which is a consummate learner. If you call yourself a professional, you are constantly growing and learning. And so you need to be doing professional development. And professional development is outside of your day job, and it takes work. And, you're not necessarily, hopefully you have a good company you're working for that will help sponsor you and understand that should be part of your job too, because it benefits the company. But, it also takes probably work outside of the day job, and going and continuing, whether it be graduate school education or just professional certification, constantly listening to webinars and such and around the education. I have a growing list, but usually about, when folks ask me a list of, half dozen go-to sources, rags in the industry that I am constantly reading and trying to stay up on the latest and greatest, because we are in a very quick-moving, evolving industry.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do a shout out. We do have a young professional groups, and I always say to them, you're leaving benefits on the table, because most companies have tuition reimbursement. And I know you're exhausted at the end of the day, especially like you and I having 2 kids, it just takes a lot out of you. But I always say, just schedule it into your life, and those 2 years that you need, or the 1 year, or the 6 months for the certificate, it'll be gone like in a drop of a hat, and then you have that advancement. So I agree. And companies pay for it, if you have tuition reimbursement. So you're leaving a benefit on the table that you don't recognize until you don't have it. And then you're doing out of pocket, which is like you're kicking yourself. I should have done it when I had the opportunity. So Erin, I hope we answered your question. We have another question coming in too. If you could change one thing to boost the success mission of Power Options, what would that be? If you had to come in, you came in 2 years ago, maybe you've already done it. What do you think was the thing that maybe hasn't been done yet in Power Options or needs to be done on Power Options that you would change? Or was it perfect?
It is definitely not perfect. I and what I should be doing, I'm staying up at night and worried about the future of the organization. We are in an evolving time period for the organization, transitioning really to the changing landscape of energy that's evolved over the time. It's more dynamic and more about clean energy and less resources, and how do we get paid as an organization. So if I had one dream, I would find a sponsor for all of Power Options work so that we could do whatever we do for our members and do a lot of it and not have to worry about the business model around it. And we have some interesting options available to us as a nonprofit that maybe not be just the normal of what a for-profit would do in a similar mission. But
well, let's dive into that a little bit so people can understand, because if I'm a nonprofit, the services you provide is very unique because you're a nonprofit. But there are for-profit brokers out there that do the same thing you do. So can you talk about a little bit of difference of that so people understand that there is a thing called a broker and why you're different than them?
Sure. I mean, one thing I want to highlight is that, and I should have said it in the beginning too, as a nonprofit consortium, we're also an advocacy group. And so what a broker won't do, what we do is, at least 10-20% of our work is at the legislative level, at the regulatory level, at ISO New England and the wholesale markets, advocating on behalf of all nonprofits and public entities across the region, whether they're members or not, right? Because as other trade associations, similar to that work, we're advocating on their behalf, even if they aren't a member, because we're advocating for the whole. And we can often save our members more dollars that way than we do in any individual contract way. So I do want to highlight that because it is core and very important to what we do in that regulatory legislative advocacy work. Yes, so our programs kind of do we call them programs, and rather than a business unit or something, we do everything, again going back to the consortium. If we can do it and build a program out of it and leverage the power of the consortium, that's how we do it. Sometimes folks do think we look like a broker or a consultant. For a broker, we don't add a fee on top of the contract like they do. Our business model is different. The suppliers do pay us and pay our fees, but it's in a different model, in that it's fixed. It's not, it's not success-based. We are, just doing that negotiation after the contract is won and after the competitive solicitation. And that's a different way in which the suppliers pay the cost rather than the end energy users, rather than the customers, members paying the cost with it being added on top of through the broker fee. But it could be similar. We like to think we're very different in that we really are integrated and looking at the whole picture. But it might feel similar to some. And oftentimes, Mary, we actually work with our members, brokers, and consultants. Usually consultants that we can work hand in hand together, but it is a different model, and what we're doing, especially in the clean energy world, is a lot more integrated. Again, it goes back to the consortium leverage and using that in everything that we do. It's a big group of peers and nonprofits, right? And when we're working with a consultant or broker, you're not meeting every other customer there, right? This is a family for Power Options for us.
Well, it's interesting that you talked about policy, legislative, regulatory, market rules, because we have a question that kind of builds on what you just talked about. And this viewer asked, what do you think about a 24/7 hourly matching of clean energy for procurement versus an annual matching, as with current RPS policies? And it says really basically this person must work for a large tech firm, because they're saying working towards this for their clean energy procurement. What do you think of that concept? So
Yeah, I think
yeah. So what do you think about changing for the RPS? And please explain to people what an RPS is, because again, young professionals want to educate them as well.
so. RPS, Renewable Portfolio Standard. Today in Massachusetts, and I'm sorry, I'm just ringing off Massachusetts numbers. We also cover Rhode Island and Connecticut too. So they're different in different states. But in Massachusetts, about 22% of our electricity supply is required to come from renewable resources because of the Renewable Portfolio Standard legislation that we have in place that just got updated last year, as the attendees might have heard, and the big climate bill that happened, and that'll increase up to 40% by 2030. So that's
a big increase. That's double.
Yeah. So that's that will be big growth, and we're seeing it already with the offshore wind procurement that just got selected, and we'll continue to see. I think with the main hydro challenges, Massachusetts got a long way to go to figure out how to get to 40%. But another topic, another question, going back to the 24/7, I do think I think we'll get there at some point. We'll have to address that, of course, because at some point, if we have, I don't know, it'll be 20% of the hours, still being dirty and not. I'm glad and happy and thankful to the Googles of the world who are pressing this. If you've seen any of the recent news over the last year with them, they are starting to procure their VPPAs in a method that allows them to look at it 24/7, looking at it hourly rather than on an annual. I think that is necessary ultimately to our 2050 goals. For what we do for members, I don't think it'll happen in the very short term. I'll call it, maybe that's probably in the 5 to 7 year time frame that we'll have to start thinking about it. I would love, of course, legislators to start thinking about that too, because we have to. But it's always a chicken and the egg. Like, let's just start with the annual. Let's just start with getting some renewable into the ground. But when we start getting up to, I don't know what the right percentage is, but 40 to 60 to 70% renewable on the grid, and if we haven't thought and taken care of the 24/7 load profile, then we're still going to be pretty far from the goals that we need to be in 2050.
So, and we have another personal question, but let me ask you one more policy question. So, have you been working with your nonprofits to do other things like, install EV charging stations and do kind of energy audits so that, it's not just your energy procurement, but it's taking care of your building and looking how to make that more energy efficient and maybe doing some DR? I mean, so do you do more than just procure the energy for them?
We do. I don't know how much time we have and want to talk through every single one. I think one way we kind of do it all, and everything that you mentioned, DR, demand response, we do directly through the electric contract, where our members get paid when they reduce during the peak hours, directly because of the contract and what we negotiated, again, because we can, as with the consortium leverage. We do solar, as we talked about that, and we help them. It's kind of a white glove approach where we're the member advocate. We work on behalf of the members through that whole process and making sure from proposal all the way to construction complete that it's a good project for the member. So that's that. Do the same thing with EV charging. I like to say often in the clean energy stuff, half of our battle is just making sure that the members do the projects in the right time, because clean energy incentives go like this, right? Or maybe more accurately, steps down is how they go. And so when National Grid and Eversource and Mass Save have a fire sale and put the incentives up to 100% of a paid for a project, and Mass Save at the end of the year, it's our job to make all of our members aware and try to get a hold of that those great dollars that are out there so that they can get those projects done. So we do EV charging, and we've done a couple dozen by now, EV charging station installation for our members. We just finished our first EV vehicle, a school bus, last year with the town of Arlington, and helping with them that. And we're this year going to be doing a whole fleet vehicle procurement and fleet electrification program. And we also do energy efficiency and work with them to, like I said, a lot of that's just about educating them about what's there in that mass save and getting the audit done and getting them a project that, gives them great financial returns, because that's usually where you should go to first for cost savings of efficiency. And then lastly, we are excited to launch this year. We just brought some new staff on board and very excited. I'm going to give her a shout out because she's on. Erin Camp just joined us at Power Options to launch our new energy advisory program, where we're going to be doing more direct kind of technical analysis, hands-on support for what is, really full decarbonization planning for our members, because we've heard the demand from our members. They're asking us constantly, we've got these goals, we don't know how to get to them. So how can you look at the entire carbon footprint of a member and figure out what they should be doing in each of those areas? What should I be doing in efficiency? What should I be doing in renewable electricity, on-site, off-site? Electrification of the building needs to be a part of it in order to get to long-term goals. And of course, electricity and natural gas procurement has to be a piece of that puzzle, which is our core. So looking at that full picture is what energy advisory is, and is what we're building and offering now.
So let's switch a little bit to the fact that you aggregate already. I'm going to aggregate and talk about policy issues before each of the states that you are involved in, which is Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. So rates, let's talk about rates. They're going up and they continue to go up. I'm sure that is the biggest concern you hear from your members. Is there anything we can do at this point? Or is this just the beginning of a higher future? I mean, literally, where do we see the end? And can we do something to change that course?
Yeah, well, I do think there is something that we can continue to do. There's probably likely going to be cost increases that come, but there shouldn't be, right? Renewable, we've been all told that renewable is now at cost parity with natural gas. And so we should be taking advantage of that. We should be procuring offshore wind that is cheaper than other sources. And the problem is that we have a lot of market barriers and obstacles in the structuring of them that, I like to say it's a little bit of simplification, but we are paying twice for that offshore wind currently because of how ISO New England markets work. And that's costing us more money than it should already. And so we do what we can in our advocacy role to try to advocate for better rules, better integration as we bring renewables into the market, and we need to bring them in, making sure that we do it in the most cost-effective way. Another topic area in this as well is resiliency, and trying to make sure that, yes, we need resiliency. We need to make sure as we move to a more renewable grid that we have a more resilient grid, but doing it in a cost-effective way and making sure that the parties are working together, and the parties being the wholesale markets, the states, and what they want to accomplish, doing it all in an integrated way so that we don't pay redundant costs in order to be resilient. So I think there are ways that we can save. I think one of my bugaboos lately and what we can do, and we need to press on our transmission costs. We're going to have to invest in transmission in order to bring more renewables, but already the transmission costs that kind of snuck up on us over the last 20 years has grown 900%.
I know you have a great graph that you use when I've heard you speak, because I think that's going to be an eye-opener to people to see 900% cost increase in transmission over how long of a period. I was wondering if you have that graph, you can put it up, because I think that that's critical for people to understand, because you're right. We've been told that these costs of renewables are going down, yet the rates are going up. So where is all of it? We are paying twice. So I want you to do a little bit bigger drill down on that, but also the transmission costs are very high. I don't know if you want to share that graph, but one of the questions that one of our viewers has is, do you see this as the biggest challenge in the next 10 years? She asked, what is the biggest challenge going to be for your members in terms of buying energy? Is it going to be cost, or is it going to be reliability, or is it going to be resiliency? I mean, if you had to pick, what do you see it as?
It's going to be decarbonizing, especially as that has to become a policy rather than a voluntary mechanism. Kate, if you want to show the transmission cost too, so Mary can show what she was talking about, slide 3. if you bring that up as the transmission cost, and it is a long period. So I'm sorry, I don't have the cumulative average growth rate, and I'm sure some will argue that I'm maybe being a little bit extreme by saying showing the 900% because it's a long period of time. But look at that chart, and that's before we even start really building a transmission system that can integrate renewables into it. That was just about what we needed to do because of the system being at the end of its useful life and the upgrades that we needed to do between that period. But it basically went unmanaged because the utilities get this rate of return that allows them to just keep investing in it. And we work very hard in our programs. Is really about the contracts and what brokers do for customers is about the supply part. But the distribution and transmission side of the bill, Kate, if you go to slide, I think I have it in here in slide 4, is just as much, if not more, a cost now. Of course, with all the policy costs of putting renewables in, and it's just becoming an adder on the bill. We can't manage this for members, right? We manage their supply costs and help that, but it's very little room that you can do. What we can do for those other costs, those policy costs and distribution and transmission, is the advocacy work that we do as well as we can. And that's why we still think it's very critical to be at ISO New England, be at the DPU in order to advocate on these costs. And sorry, this is a little bit of a confusing chart, but essentially the blue is the supply. The rest of it is all the other costs on each of the bars that go into a bill for a customer. So there's a lot that we need to continue to manage. Those are going to grow, but we need to make sure that they're done in the most efficient way possible.
Well, and I was going to build on that because you said decarbonization is the biggest challenge. And so we have to do more renewables. So that's, everyone's in agreement, more renewables. But renewables like offshore, that's more transmission because you got to bring in all this power from offshore. And so how do we do this in a way that makes the most sense so that we can at least not say, decarbonization at any cost? I mean, because that at some point it gets cost prohibitive. So how can we do decarbonization and keep it where it's affordable, I guess is the question.
Sure. So two sides of it. One is the distributed side at the building layer of decarbonization. Let me put that off aside. That's the decarbonization that I was talking about. That is really our members' main challenge is how do they decarbonize for their own carbon footprint if you're a town or if you are a housing authority and whatever facilities you have, as well as whatever fleet you have, how do you decarbonize that, which is going to be a challenge. And I'll talk more about that. But to go back to your transmission question, it's regional coordination. We have this really unique grid. If you look at how all the other grids are structured in the country, where we have regional coordination in the wholesale market, but all of the renewables is really being done at the state level. And, for the first couple of offshore wind, it's transmission per state. Right. And of course, you're going to get scale if you coordinate across Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Massachusetts, which they are starting to do now. And thanks to, I'll give a shout out to the Environmental League of Massachusetts. They have the New England Offshore Wind Coalition, which I know you join me on. I think they're doing a lot of good work to try to really propel that regional coordination. But it's my same argument for resiliency. If we want to manage those costs of what we need to do to make a resilient grid, we need to do it as a group of states together with ISO New England. We need to do it all together rather than each of us doing in silos, which comes, of course, with added costs. So
we have another question coming here. Let's go on to a personal side to get to know you better. So this woman, I assume it's a woman, it's anonymous, said, how do we get more veterans involved in energy issues? Since you said that was one of the best experience you ever had, that gave you the great skill sets that you need, how do we attract more people then from the military into the energy community and the environmental community?
Yeah, I think like any community, and you can speak to this across segments of people that we want into our community, and with diversity and inclusion goals that we have as well. But you need to go where they are, and you need to go to the military branches before they get out of the service and have already decided the path. And there are a lot of great organizations that are working on this. I was the year before last, I was a fellow at the Atlantic Council, Veterans Advanced Energy, and they had an effort, and there are other organizations too, trying to do what they can to educate the active military personnel about the energy industry before they get out, as they're choosing what they want to do and where they want to go. I do what I can, and I get a lot of outreach from folks that are already decided to get into the industry. But if we want more, we need to be doing what good recruiting practices are for segments of people that are not represented well. But I think it's a very attractive industry. I think there are a lot of veterans that are starting to come in as they realize the match between the skill set of what they have in the military and in our industry, and what the needs are.
So it's interesting that you talk about that, because we're going to have to be very disciplined, because we have these goals. 2030, we have to be 50% of the GHG, reducing our carbon. So I just want to go back to the decarbonization, because you said, we talked a little bit about how the states are leading roles, and I want to touch a little bit about ISO, but you also said your members have to decarbonize, and that might be foreign to them. I mean, because like, really, how many people think about, how do I decarbonize my energy use? I mean, are you talking about energy efficiency? No, you're not. So can you give people a little idea of how on a level that's my nonprofit organization, how I can too be a part of the goal for decarbonization?
Yeah, no, and right now it is voluntary. It's the ones that really, understand what the need is, and so they've got voluntary goals for carbon reduction, and they're starting to put that in print. A lot of the towns, of course, municipalities are doing that and putting plans together, but many of the towns have not yet done that, and they're going to have to as we start to enact the recent climate legislation in Massachusetts, and I think this will continue in the other states as well, for building performance standards like Boston has, where they are going to be required to bring their energy usage in their facilities down to net zero over a period of time. So it's going to start to become a policy requirement rather than voluntary. And that's where I say it's going to be a challenge for our members, because they don't know where to start. They haven't been thinking of it. So we're starting to build tools. I mean, going back to the what can we do uniquely as an organization and the consortium leverage, I think Power Options can help these institutions uniquely, and many of them that don't have their own resources and understanding even how to calculate the carbon footprint of their energy usage, to be able to build those plans. And that's what we're doing with the Energy Advisory Program, and building in a low-cost way an ability to come up with the best strategy, and then help them implement that roadmap over time, over the period of time that they have to, and as cost effectively as possible, right? And that's, of course, still what we very much care about for our members, is they want to reach the carbon goals, and how can they also do it as cost effectively as possible. So efficiency is one component of that decarbonization. Yeah. There's lots of different components that will be part of that.
Well, and they're used to the efficiency, and a lot of them have spent a lot of time and effort on achieving that. But some of them might be thinking, is the grid capable of me going all electric and having all my EVs? I mean, here I am, you're dealing with nonprofits that are right in like the mom and pop communities, that, can our distribution system handle if we say 20 of your nonprofits all of a sudden go all electric for their thermal, for their transportation? Can the actual distribution grid handle, if you're successful in getting your members to see how important it is to decarbonize?
Yeah, I think it's a question that we all have. I know the utilities probably are staying up at night. ISO New England, we know, is doing a large-scale study on this, that hopefully we see what the scenarios look like in the next couple of years in the future of the grid study, where they're doing it at the wholesale transmission level analysis. So yeah, I think National Grid and Eversource and Unitil are starting to think like this. We know that the natural gas utilities have been required to do this. What does the future of gas look like? Power Options has been participating in those proceedings, and and studies and trying to see. So it's definitely not answered. And I think the end energy users need to do what they have to do, and the distribution system has to figure that out, and how they're going to hit the goals that the states have to hit to. And it's there are a lot of areas still, large, medium, and heavy duty vehicle transportation, electrification, whether it be electrification, it might be green hydrogen, or the other tools and things that haven't yet been fully developed and commercialized. Especially our large energy users like campuses, universities, hospital systems, and how do they totally decarbonize with the thermal needs that they have in a New England environment is not answered. It's not quite clear, and there's a lot of different members. Some of our more ambitious and proactive members are trying different things out. I think Harvard recently just came out with a new facility that is testing one type of technology, and how they do that and how they reach it, and they're making a bet that natural gas can get them there for the short term until something else replaces that. But so there's a lot of question marks, I guess, at the end of the day that is still there around specifically transportation electrification and the heavy duty side, as well as the thermal side for building, heating, cooling.
Yes, it seems like after listening to you that we have for a while here, it's a complicated system. It's not your traditional, the generator makes the power, you put the fuel in, it generates, it delivers it on a wire, and you get, a pipe that delivers your gas, and that was the end of the day. It's become a lot more complicated than it was prior to the deregulation and with the effort of trying to go into a clean, getting into an RPS that's going to be 40%, going into carbon reduction goals of 50% by 2030, which is not that far, with 100% by 2050. So there's a lot for any nonprofit that's out there, or anybody who's like on a board of a nonprofit or listening to your conversation now. They must be sitting there going, wow, this is very complicated. And I'm just going to touch on another area that even makes it more complicated is we have two other entities, the ISO market and FERC. So, I mean, ISO, you talked about the states doing their thing, and then there's the market doing their thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it seems like one's going left and the other one's going right. And that's never a good thing for someone to go left and right, and you're trying to get them to go into the center. So I'd love to get your point of view so people can chime in and hopefully, ask some questions on this.
Yeah, sure. Well, first thing I'll say, it's been my dream and goal, and what excites me about work every day and what we do for customers every day, whether it be at Power Options and in other companies I've been with, which is energy made easy. It's my tagline, taking the complex of energy, which has gotten more complex over time. Well, you have to think about 12 different things rather than just electric and gas. And things that you can do in order to reduce your costs, but just simplifying that, taking that burden on for the customer, that's our mission, and trying not to bog them down with all the complication technicalities of it, trying to take all this legalese, energies, regulatory language, and translating that into common understandable, what does it mean for me, is at the heart of what we do for our members, and have always thought very important what we do in our industry as professionals generally too. So we strive to do that, but where all
well,
the
then you should be very good in helping us with ISO market, because that seems to be a mystery box for a lot of people.
So here's what I'll say about the disconnect of the, as you allude to, the FERC and ISO New England and such, is over time, I think we will get there. I have faith. We've seen a lot of strong signals in generally the right direction over the last 20 years. Time will tell whether it's fast enough or not. I always like to joke that ISO New England works at the speed of molasses. The things that we're advocating today, I'm going to be long gone when they actually make an impact on the bills of energy users. We're talking about things today in the market rules of ISO New England that probably will not get implemented until 2028 at least. So it's just the nature of how the markets work and how regulatory in this industry works. It's very, very long term. A lot of the state stuff is is much shorter term. So that's sometimes more rewarding in doing that work, because we can see the real tangible output of the advocacy work there. But yeah, I think there are a lot of strong signs, at least recently, where FERC and the wholesale markets are starting to get onto the same lane. As an example of that, ISO New England saying, I think they might have recently changed their vision statement, right? And their vision statement says their job and doing their mission and keeping I don't know it offhand exactly, but it's, essentially running and maintaining a efficient, reliable grid in an environment with clean energy is what it says. So they have brought clean energy into that. They know that is what they have to do. And we've seen some strong signals where they're working to do that, and it's going to take time. And of course we have, maybe sometimes differing opinions exactly how that we implement that in the short term versus the long term, but they're moving together in that general direction. FERC is giving orders in that general direction of, distributed grid, reliable grid, things like that are all going, I think, in the right direction.
Well, and I'm glad that is, because we know that climate change is real. It brought about what we are in the Zoom box with the COVID. And also, I guess the question is, I'd like to ask you one more personal question. How was it to be a leader of an organization right when you came on? All of a sudden, boom, COVID starts. A mother of 2 kids, 3rd grade and 6th grade, probably doing in homeschooling. At the same time trying to run an organization. I'd just love to, give us a little snapshot of what it was like this last year and a half or 2 years.
Fantastic. And I'll just say, number one, because I have a wonderful staff that was so welcoming and bringing me into their very tight-knit team. My predecessor, Cindy Arcade, built a great organization. The team is really tight-knit, and they were welcoming enough to bring me in with open arms. And it's due to that. But I do like to joke that there's nothing like a good pandemic to accelerate a leadership transition. And there's of course so many challenges with COVID that we all talk about every day. But I will say there's been a lot of silver linings for us as an organization. In the early days when it happened, it allowed us to really connect with our members in a whole different way. We were out distributing hand sanitizer and masks, and we were doing group procurement, aggregation procurement for masks and sanitizer, because our members couldn't do it on an individual basis. So we repurposed in that way. And that was really rewarding. The use of technology, it's been an accelerant for our organization, moved us to a flexible workplace where we have now a very flexible environment, and folks are, yes, they're in a box, unfortunately, but we're also, all of the benefits that I am a strong advocate that as a society that we maintain, that we need to be able to maintain these benefits of a hybrid environment. I value FaceTime. I value being able to have those relationships in person, but I also value the flexibility that we need to, if we want more diversity and inclusiveness in our community, in our industry, we need to be able, as leaders of our industry, be able to advocate and keep in place and make sure that we keep in place all of the rewards that we've had built over with this hybrid environment. Well, so the kids homeschooling. I left that to the teachers, by the way. Very thankful my kids were just of that age. I often say if they were 3 or 4 years younger, I have very strong empathy for many of the parents that had to parent in the COVID environment. But thankfully, my youngest was in 1st grade, and so he was able to use a mouse well enough. The school set up remote schooling, and really, actually, another silver lining is they grew in their independence. And I'm really proud of what happened with my kids in COVID, quite honestly, because they had 2 working parents, and we shut our office doors at 8 a.m. and said, "Good luck, kids," and they got themselves breakfast, they got themselves lunch, and they grew in a lot of ways with COVID and what happened. So, but I recognize that we were fortunate in what we have in our and where we live and what we were provided, and that might not be true for everyone, but they were of the right age. So.
Well, we're coming up to the hour, Heather. It has been fantastic talking to you. As anybody knows, my AMA little chats, we always end with a question that basically we're collecting all the answers, and hopefully one day maybe I'll just do a blog with all the responses. But with our question that we always ask our guest is, can you think of a time that you got a piece of advice in your life, and basically what was it? And did you follow it? And if so, Was it successful? If not, should you have, we're just trying to see if you can recall somebody giving you a piece of advice. What was it? And did you or did you not follow it?
I hope folks are better at remembering these pieces of advice than I am, because probably what I'm remembering is amalgamation of multiple things and influences that I will then translate to advice for somebody else, and I do often, which is this. And I think it probably came mostly from my husband, who is, besides being my greatest supporter and fan, he's really pushed me tremendously in my professional career to pushing me to do what I didn't think was possible. And so I've been very fortunate in that way. But one of the things that he advised and we've done as a family is structure our lives to be flexible. In that, I mean, we don't overextend ourselves financially, and we're fortunate. We have two incomes, but we're not living off of two incomes. And so we've been able to have that flexibility to do what we want to do rather than do what we have to do. We are not tied to one particular job, and that's given us a lot of reward in our professional career, and that we can explore different things. And so that would be the piece of advice that I remember and that I would pass on, and I do pass on to anyone that I get a chance to go on a soapbox about is, make it a life, structure it a life so that you give yourself career flexibility. And it might not happen in your first 10 years of career, but in your 30s and your 40s, as you start to grow in the resources, and if you're lucky enough to have a partner like I have, that you're able to structure your life so that you don't feel beholden to a paycheck.
Well, and I think that's great advice, because I know that you've been mentoring a NEWIEE mentor, and I just want to do a shout out that we're starting another round of the mentoring program. And Heather, you said that that's been a great success, correct?
Yeah, that's one of the most rewarding things I think in my career that I've done yet here in the clean energy space. Rachel worked with Form Energy. I met her through NEWIEE 2 years ago when I signed up to be a mentor. I think it was only supposed to be a 6-month engagement under the mentor program, and we said, why stop at 6 months? It was just. And by the way, it's two-way. So anyone who's thinking about being a mentor, it's not just about giving; it's also about receiving. There's definitely reciprocity in the engagement that I gained so much, and I love staying in touch with that age group and seeing, but also just sharing what I can. Something I should say, by the way, as well, is in the Marines, I got into a place where I put my gender aside, and so it wasn't until about 5 years where I woke up and said, oh, I think it's actually important that I advocate for females in our industry, in the career space and such, because in the Marines I needed to be gender neutral in that world to be able to succeed. And so now I am I do what I can. I'll do more, renew it as much as I can. But it's been very rewarding to be in that position with the mentor-mentee relationship. So I definitely advocate that to all.
And thank you for that, and we hope others will do it. So I just wanted to say we usually I will tell you our next guest, but unfortunately, Kate Johnson from Field Associate is going to be moving on to some more fantastic career move. And so this is another great opportunity for our viewers on LinkedIn and on the NEWIEE job post. So that's another place to go, guys, if you want to feel what Heather's talking about, which is flexibility and always look for new challenges. We have an opportunity for you to become part of the NEWIEE family in a paid position. So if you have any interest in finding a new career that you want to be more involved in NEWIEE, we have a job posting. And once we get that job filled, we're going to then be able to do our robust programming. I'm hoping that we will be announcing our March AMA, so stay tuned on our NEWIEE.org. And Heather, I just want to thank you again. It's 5 o'clock and we always end on time. I can't thank you enough. We could have gone on forever going over all this, but thank you so much for being kicking off our 2022 AMA, and I appreciate it. And anybody who's part of a nonprofit, check out Power Options. Thanks, care.
Mary. We'll see you in person at the gala.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.